In 2014, a 17-year-old girl vanished in Olympia, Washington. For 5 years, her family searched for answers. In 2019, they finally found her, but the mystery only got darker.
In the Pacific Northwest, winters come early and stay long. The kind of gray that settles into everything. The trees, the roads, the spaces between people. In 2014, in the small city of Olympia, Washington, a 17-year-old girl named Danielle Griffith went missing. For 5 years, her family didn't know where she was. In 2019, they found out, and somehow that answer only brought more questions. Her name was Danielle. Her family called her Dani, and they are still waiting for justice. Olympia, Washington sits at the southern tip of Puget Sound. It is the state capital, home to government buildings, college students, and the kind of small city life that moves at its own quiet pace. It is surrounded by water and forest, and in winter it is almost perpetually overcast. The kind of place where, if something goes wrong, the trees and the rain seem to close in around it. Danielle Griffith was 17 years old in 2014. She grew up in this world, the Pacific Northwest, with its particular rhythms and its particular beauty and its particular challenges. People who knew Dani described her the way you describe someone who makes an impression without trying to. She was loved. She was part of a family who loved her deeply, a family who would spend the next 5 years not knowing where she was, and the years after that still not knowing what truly happened to her. 17 years old. To be 17 is to be in the middle of becoming. You are not yet who you will be, but you can feel yourself moving toward it. You are still figuring out the world, still accumulating the experiences that will define you. You have, if everything goes as it should, decades of life in front of you. Dani Griffith was 17 when the world lost track of her, and the people who loved her have spent every year since then trying to find out why. Thurston County, where Olympia sits, is a region of contrasts. It has the formality of a state capital and the ruggedness of the surrounding wilderness. The forests here are dense. The waterways are numerous. It is, in many ways, a beautiful place to grow up. But beauty and safety are not the same thing. And for some young people, particularly those already navigating difficult circumstances, even a beautiful place can become somewhere dangerous. What matters above everything else, before we get into timelines and investigations, is simply this. Dani was real. She was loved. She had a family who have carried her memory through more than a decade of unanswered questions, and she deserved better than what happened to her. In 2014, Danielle Griffith went missing from Olympia, Washington. She was 17 years old. The precise details surrounding her disappearance, exactly when, exactly where, exactly how she came to vanish from the life of everyone who loved her, are details that investigators have worked to establish in the years since. And because Dani's case remains officially unsolved, there are aspects of what happened during that period that remain unclear, disputed, or simply unknown. What is clear is this. At some point in 2014, Dani was gone, and the people who loved her began the particular, devastating experience of not knowing. Not knowing is its own kind of suffering. It sits differently than grief. It doesn't carry the finality that allows people to begin, however slowly, to move forward. It is an open wound, a question with no answer, a door that won't close, no matter how many times you try. Dani's family lived inside that not knowing for 5 years. 5 years of wondering. 5 years of hoping. 5 years of every possible explanation cycling through your mind in the middle of the night. She's somewhere safe. She'll come back. Someone knows something. Someone will call. 5 years. Missing persons cases involving teenagers are tragically common in the United States. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children receives hundreds of thousands of reports every year. And within that staggering number, there is an uncomfortable truth that advocates and researchers have documented repeatedly. Not all missing teenagers receive the same level of attention, resources, or urgency. The perceived background of a missing person matters, even when it shouldn't. The circumstances of their life before they disappeared matter, even when they shouldn't. Whether a case fits a particular narrative that institutions and media find easy to engage with, that matters too, even when it should never, ever factor into how seriously a child's disappearance is taken. We will come back to that, because it is relevant to Dani's story in ways that cannot be ignored. For now, the year is 2014. Danielle Griffith is 17 years old, and she is gone. What does a family do when someone they love disappears? They search. They make phone calls. They print flyers and distribute them and post on every platform available to them and contact anyone who might know anything. They sit by phones. They answer questions from investigators, and then they wait and wait and wait for those same investigators to have answers of their own. They grieve without being allowed to grieve, because grief implies an ending, and there is no ending. There is only the ongoing, grinding weight of uncertainty, of not knowing. Dani's family did all of these things, and they did not stop. They kept Dani's name alive through the years she was missing, the years when the wider world, as it tends to do, had largely moved on to other stories. Because here is an uncomfortable truth about missing persons cases, particularly those involving teenagers. The initial period of searching is intense, and then, if there are no breakthroughs, if there are no significant leads, the attention begins to fade. Investigators carry other cases, the media finds other headlines, and the family is left alone in a silence that grows heavier with every year that passes. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. No answers. And then, 2019. Tumwater, Washington is a small city directly adjacent to Olympia. The two communities are so close that their boundaries blur into one another. They are, for most practical purposes, part of the same place. The same types of streets, the same kinds of neighborhoods, the same dense forests pressing in at the edges of everything. In 2019, in Tumwater, human remains were discovered. Those remains were identified as Danielle Griffith. She had been missing for 5 years. And now her family had an answer to one question. Where was Dani? But the answer to the only question that truly mattered, what happened to her, remained out of reach. It still does. When human remains are discovered and identified, a new phase of investigation begins. Forensic analysis, determination of cause and manner of death, the slow, painstaking work of reconstructing what happened, when it happened, and how. In Dani's case, the precise details of what the forensic investigation established have not been fully disclosed publicly, which is common practice in active investigations. What is publicly known is that her death has been under investigation, that her family has continued to advocate loudly and persistently for a thorough and complete process, and that, as of the time of this video, no one has been charged in connection with her death. What that means, practically speaking, is this. More than a decade after Danielle Griffith was last seen alive, her family still does not have justice. And that is a failure. Not necessarily the failure of any single individual, but a systemic failure. A failure of urgency, of resources, of transparency, that has left a grieving family without the answers they deserve. Dani was 17 years old. Her remains were found in a wooded area of Tumwater. Someone knows what happened to her in the time between when she was last seen and when she was found. Someone always knows. The question in cases like this is never really whether the truth exists. It is whether the truth will be pursued, with the commitment, the resources, and the urgency that a 17-year-old girl's life demands. There is something that advocates in the missing and murdered persons space say repeatedly, and it bears repeating here. Every victim deserves the same quality of investigation. Every family deserves the same level of transparency. Every case deserves the same urgency. The neighborhood you grew up in, the circumstances of your life before you disappeared. None of these things should determine how hard investigators work to find out what happened to you. None of them should determine whether your family gets answers. For too many families across this country, and Dani's family is among them, that principle has not been honored in practice. That is not a political statement. It is a documented reality that researchers, advocates, and families have raised for years. It is a problem that law enforcement agencies themselves have, in some cases, openly acknowledged. Dani deserved better. Her family deserves better. Equal urgency, equal resources, equal answers. Throughout the years of Dani's disappearance, and in the years since her remains were found, her family has done what families in this situation are forced to do. They have kept going. They have kept her name visible. They have spoken to anyone willing to listen. They have pushed for answers through official channels and through community ones, through social media and personal outreach, and the sheer, stubborn force of love that has nowhere else to go. Because that is what love looks like when it has no other outlet. It keeps moving. It refuses to accept silence as a final answer. It shows up year after year, even when the world has moved on. Dani's family, her parents, her siblings, the people who grew up alongside her, have carried this weight for more than 10 years now. And they have done it largely without widespread public attention, without viral news cycles, without the national platform that some cases receive and others, for reasons that are uncomfortable to examine, do not. They have done it quietly, persistently, and with a dignity that is genuinely humbling. If you are watching this video, you are, in a small but real way, part of what their persistence has been working toward. Because awareness matters. Because the more people who know Dani's name, who know that her case exists and remains unsolved, and that her family is